Everybody, it's Max here for the Mama's Legacy podcast, and I'm back here to talk some NFL after the Super Bowl with a new guest on the pod. Jimmy, quickly introduce yourself, introduce your stuff, and let the people know where to find you.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. I'm the other half of the far end of the bench. You had my co-host Nico on a while back. He's definitely more of a basketball guy, so it was a good. And he hated when that Mambas came across. He's like he loves Kobe, but he's the biggest Nuggets fan I've ever met. So he's like, man, I like the podcast, but they're big Kobe fans, Laker fans. I was like, yeah, I really enjoyed listening to him on your show. So figured when you reached out, I actually on my other podcast, I have two. I have Far End of the Bench and Are We All Right? When you reached out through there, I was like, man, if you can talk other than basketball, I mean, I could talk basketball, but trust me, nobody's gonna want to sit there and listen to it. So if you can talk more than just basketball, I'd be more than happy to come on. And yeah, here I am. You can follow those shows at FEOTB Pod and at AWAR Pod, by the way, and they're on all podcasting platforms. So that's a little bit about how we kind of got this opportunity rolling.
Definitely. And links to those will be in the description down below wherever you can find him. And it's time to talk some football, like you mentioned. We're not here to talk basketball, rare occurrence here on the Mama's Legacy podcast, but the Super Bowl just happened. And before we get into this, who are you really rooting for going into that game?
I am a diehard Bengals fan, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm a diehard Bengals fan. So it was a rough way to end it. But hey, I can't really complain because they shouldn't have been there in the first place. So yeah, it was a little bit rough. I was definitely rooting for the Bengals going in, but the Rams had plenty. Like Whitworth's my guy. I love Andrew Whitworth. So and Matthew Stafford. There's a lot of guys on that team that I don't mind won a ring. I just wish that it didn't come at the expense of my own team.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. The Rams did deserve that win. I'm not actually a diehard Rams fan. I'm a diehard Broncos fan, but I love watching players play. Rams have Von Miller, so I had to root for them this game. The Cincinnati Bengals are a team though that I'm watching, and I'm actually happy that the Rams won this one because the Rams, let's be honest, won't be back. The Cincinnati Bengals, on the other hand, they'll be back. They'll be popping in the next couple years if my calculating is going to be correct on that. But the Cincinnati Bengals, I actually thought they were going to win that game going into the fourth quarter. And then that last drive by the Rams, they were playing prevent. They were playing great defense the last four possessions for the Rams, no scoring, no nothing. And then all of a sudden, pressure seemed to get to the coach, and they were doing prevent. Jesse Bates looked like he was nullified out the plays. He was 30 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I was really concerned. Take me through that last defensive drive for you guys.
I really don't put any of it on the defensive coaching. I think that Anarumo is the only one of the main reasons as to why the Bengals were there. What he did to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's not forget that he did shut down, quote unquote, the greatest quarterback in the league for an entire half of football, made him look like he had no business being on the field. So I don't actually question the coaching. I don't think that Jesse Bates had any real impact on it. The worst part about that drive, the Rams, they basically saved those plays for that drive. And like, this is the sequence that we have. We have a shot to win this game. These are the plays that we're running. And the referees decided, hey, I forgot we didn't get much screen time. So let's go ahead. Let's start throwing flags when we had not thrown a flag on either side. Now I know I saw the T Higgins play too. I'm not stupid. I watch football and I love the Bengals, but I root more for the integrity of everything. So the fact that they didn't call that, I agree that should have been called too. But if you don't call T Higgins face mask and you don't call plenty of other penalties throughout the rest of the game, you call pass interference and miss four offensive linemen jumping off sides in that same drive. It was bad execution. I'll say that Eli Apple should not have been the one covering Cooper Kupp, even though I did see a stat that he had the lowest passer rating against him throughout those playoffs. So there's some rhyme and reason to everything, but it mainly came down to it was too big of a moment. Those guys did not know how to finish. And really, honestly, Zach Taylor and the offensive coaching staff did not know how to finish. They Kyle Shanahan this thing hard back in the 28-3 Super Bowl kind of thing. Because you look at the game, you look at some of the more success that the Bengals had, especially offensively, it was when they had two tight ends in the game. They were running Joe Mixon, who is a three straight seasons, back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher. They were pounding the Rams and doing whatever they wanted to. That vaunted defense, with all of the picks, all of the money that's been invested in them, could not stop the running game. Zach Taylor stopped the running game very easily, though, and just stopped calling running plays. They thought that they had these great wide receivers, and yeah, they do. big part about the NFL is knowing what to do, like knowing what you're okay doing and knowing what the other team can't stop and just doing that. You don't have to be the most dynamic offense to win the Super Bowl. The fact is, you threw away a Super Bowl ring trying to be super flashy and being the next quote unquote genius. And all you had to do was be actually smart, continue to call the plays that worked. And that was all that needed to happen.
I agree with that, but the Bengals just as a whole, they played one hell of a game. I won't knock them for that. The reffing, I agree with you, was a bit questionable. The Higgins, yes, that should have been called, but that same play that killed the Bengals' last defensive drive where they called it on the linebacker, both tackles were off, had a false start.
And I'm very, very hard pressed to call that pass interference. Now, I get that a linebacker should not be able to cover a receiver of that caliber. Logan Wilson's a different kind of dude. We learned that this season. He was the leading team leader of interceptions through the regular season, had 2 in the playoffs already. So the guy can cover.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of, I don't know. Everybody lost their minds. That last 3 minutes, it's really a blur. We had a Super Bowl party at the house. I was watching with everybody. The last 3 minutes of the game, that entire last defensive series, I was down by myself, and it seemed like everything was unraveling at that point. Very similar, honestly, to that divisional weekend when Tom Brady had just come back and tied the game against the Rams, and they have those 2 plays down at the stretch. Kudos to them, and I think big kudos to Sean McVay. Because you want to talk about a coach who was there and basically did what Zach Taylor did this past year and totally went away from anything that worked. I mean, his offense put up 3 points in the Super Bowl the last time they were there. I will give him credit, and he took that experience. And I believe if you want to point to like one X factor outside of X's and O's, it was just the fact that Sean McVay had been there and blown the game for his own team.
No, Sean McVay did have a great turnaround from the last Super Bowl that he appeared in, a disappointing one. But to be fair, he had quite an upgrade from Goff. So, if Goff's not your starting quarterback in a Super Bowl, you've done something right. I honestly believe that McVay is a top 5 coach in this league. And a lot of people want to discredit that too young, blah, blah, blah. I think he's up there. He's done a great job since he's been in the league running it. And, Zach Taylor for the Bengals is not bad either. I've been a big fan of him, watching him lately. But for the Super Bowl MVP, Cooper Kupp won it. I'm a bit iffy on it. I still think Aaron Donald should have won it. What are your thoughts on the Super Bowl MVP?
I wouldn't go with Donald because really Donald had no impact on that game up until the final few plays. He made the play to win it. He did made the signature moment, has the 2 clips of him now pointing to his ring finger and all that kind of stuff. I was not impressed with him or Vaughn or really that pass rush in general. Those were not sacks and pressures on the quarterback because they were that great. It was a scheme issue. What was the biggest weakness of the Bengals the entire season? Offensive line play. So what are we going to do? We're going to go 3 wides, run 7-step drops and see if we can get our guys open. And they got open. You know that you're not going to be able to block Aaron Donald, Von Miller, and anybody on that side of the ball for long enough to be able to get them there. So do I think Coop should have won it? Probably not. I don't think that Aaron Donald should have won it. Honestly, I would have given it to a Stafford, maybe, other than, the turnovers. But if you want to talk about a guy who, like you were saying, had one of the bigger impacts just being there, Matthew Stafford, if he's not the quarterback in LA this season, they don't have anywhere near the kind of run that they're having. They're hard-pressed, I think, to make the playoffs if they don't have Matthew Stafford.
I actually agree with that, especially in the division that they're in. I don't think they're a great playoff team, especially if it's Goff again. I mean, it's rough. I still think Aaron Donald's presence was felt the entire game. Sure, it wasn't stat-wise there, but Aaron Donald was there for the running backs. I don't think they were going right at him. The first quarter, I remember watching a couple plays where the running game was getting a bit stuffed. Granted, that second, third quarter, he did disappear, but nobody really from the Rams played outstanding, which was weird considering that they won the Super Bowl. Typically, when your team wins the Super Bowl, you go, that guy's the reason why. That guy. Not really. I mean, I think Odell would have won it if he doesn't go down. It was confusing because I typically see somebody like, okay, they're going to win it, but this year it was like, oh, well, nobody really blew my mind.
It really did shock me when Kupp won it. Not that it was a receiver winning it, because that's actually not as uncommon as some people think, but maybe the fact that he scored the first and last touchdown of the game had something to go into it. and he was the Triple Crown. They didn't give him league MVP when he probably should have been in more consideration for it. So it might have been a consolation prize. I agree with you. There was no one standout performer. After the first week of the playoffs, I'll tell you, I was deathly afraid of Cam Akers, but thank God for ring rust and actually needing to play in more than just one game to be as good as you can be. But he really scared me. Didn't end up doing a whole lot. Sony Michel too. I thought that the Rams were going to come out and run the ball a lot more because the secondary of the Bengals and that linebacking core, the front seven on both sides has a lot to be desired for Cincinnati, and they didn't do any of that. It really seemed like they were just trying to hold on and not show what they knew was going to work until the final play. Maybe they came in a little cocky and thought that they could keep it as close as they did, and it ended up working out. But I do think that there was, you got to look at offensive coaching first for the Cincinnati Bengals and figure out we need something to change and we need to start taking advantage of just what we're given. We don't have to make anything extraordinary happen. The teams with the extraordinary plays and situations never end up winning the Super Bowl. It's very, very rare that, I think back to the Rams last Super Bowl that they won when they beat Tennessee. That was the same season Tennessee had the miracle in Music City and on that kickoff return to beat the Bills. So it's very rare that anything like that actually has a bearing on how successful you are at the end of the playoff run.
Mm-hmm. Well, that'll jump us right into the offseason talks. First things first, before we get into more Bengals offseason, Tom Brady obviously retired. There's some speculation that he's still going to somehow end up coming out of retirement, playing for a different team. Any thoughts on that? Do you think Tom Brady will play again in the NFL?
I wouldn't say that there's no chance he's going to play again in the NFL. And he's proven at his age, never was mobile, so you don't have to worry about that. But he's proven at his age that he could still orchestrate an offense. And let's not forget his last game, he did not look bad. He didn't. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were in that game because of his performance. So Tom Brady can still play. My thing is he might be doing. I think that most of this is to make sure that he never has to go through an off season again. He does not want to do any of the extra work outside. And I just saw that he's producing a movie about himself. So he's got other interests. I think that might be the thing. Doesn't have to come back to win any more Super Bowls. I don't think that he's going to come back to prove anything else. Nobody's going to be touching his records in the league for quite some time because nobody's going to be able to get there. So I'm going to say it's not a possibility that he stays retired, but I don't see him coming back like right away. I think that he's got some other things to do. We might see him do a lot of the same things that Kobe Bryant was doing right after his retirement. People were saying Kobe, might not be completely done. And he went on, he just channeled his 110% into something else and became very successful in film production. So I think it'll be interesting to follow Brady. And we're going to be hearing more about Tom Brady for the rest of the time because he just so happens to be the greatest athlete in the biggest sport in the country. So I just don't think that there's a lot right now for him to come back for.
I agree, but the thing is, I thought he was the MVP of this year. Honestly, I mean, Aaron Rodgers. I think even if it wasn't Tom Brady, I don't think it should have been Aaron Rodgers. Like you mentioned earlier, I think Coop had a better shot than Aaron Rodgers did. I mean, Aaron Rodgers' stats were not far off from Kirk Cousins, so that kind of tells you something about the MVP right there. But it's weird timing, right? The only argument for him not playing anymore is family, and I get that family time. You got to spend some time with your family, or before it's too late. But there's just so many. It's Tom Brady. Tom Brady, he loves playing the game, and I think there's a chance. I think that he maybe comes back and plays a year, not this season, next season. I think 49ers might be a good option if they don't get a star quarterback this season. They go in with a mediocre quarterback. They go through the season, don't win too much. They want to go in. They'll go call Tom Brady. I'm sure he might come out of retirement.
Yeah. I don't think that he's not going to be as eager to do it as far. And we might get one unretirement. And then by the time he does leave again, I don't see him. It's not going to be a back and forth. We're not going to be having this debate every other season. Like I wasn't even that old when Brett Favre was going and coming back, but that was ridiculous. Just thinking about how many times a guy would leave a team high and dry. No, and now, I mean, Brady's beaten every other team in the NFL too. He beat the Patriots this season. So yeah, I agree with you. He was playing great. Like I did not expect the season out of him that he was able to accomplish. I was thinking that team was going to get carried by returning 30 or excuse me 24 20 23 of 24 starters from last year's Super Bowl team. um, I don't know. I was thinking we might see Bruce Arians maybe move on from Tampa Bay without Brady as well. That seemed like they were a little bit matched together. Who knows? Maybe Tampa Bay, their front office is thinking that they actually have something set up, because they weren't, when Jameis was the quarterback there, they were very talented, and they went 8-8 with a quarterback who threw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. So I'm kind of thinking that they maybe are of the mindset that they're going to be back there, and they don't need Brady. So uh, Tampa Bay might even be willing to let Tom play wherever he wants, because that's the other thing a lot of people don't remember or don't think about. He's still under contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it's frozen now in his retirement. When he comes back, it's not like he just gets to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. Tampa Bay is going to have to give his rights to whatever team he's going to be playing for.
I mean, it's Tom Brady. He won your Super Bowl. I think you kind of just got to give him it if he does decide to come back. It kind of reminds me of a very close minus. He didn't retire. I think it's like a Philip Rivers Colts situation. Hey, we desperately need a quarterback for this year. We'll pay you a boatload of money. You're older than what it's the name. We'll pay you to come be our name quarterback, sell some tickets, and play a year for us. I think that'll be the situation with the 49ers if they don't make a deep playoff run this year going into it. But speaking of the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo. He's taken them to the playoffs a couple times, taken them to a Super Bowl, but it's becoming more and more likely that he's not a 49er going into next year. Do you think what do you think is going to happen to Jimmy Garoppolo this year?
I do think that they're going to try and move him, and in San Francisco's perfect world, it would be before the draft so that they're able to get some capital for this season. Um, they don't necessarily have to move on from him. That's the good thing about their situation. So if they don't get him out by the draft, there's a possibility of in the season something else happening, and you still have your toy and your quarterback that you traded up to draft in Trey Lance. So as an organization and as a head coach GM combination, I don't think that there's anybody more in lockstep, maybe Les Snead and Sean McVay, but they don't have to worry about the draft because they just burn draft picks whenever they get them. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan know exactly what they are trying to accomplish. I guarantee you, since the season ended for San Francisco, they've probably fielded about 20 to 25 calls regarding what they would want for Jimmy Garoppolo. So now I think the ball's in San Francisco's court. Are they willing to pull the trigger right away and have Trey Lance start at the beginning of the season? I don't think that they're comfortable doing that. I think that they're looking for the Russell Wilson, the Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback that's going to quote unquote get him over the hump, even though Jimmy G, the slander that Jimmy G gets, I get that he wasn't the winner of those Super Bowls. He knows how to win Super Bowls. He's seen it firsthand 3 separate times. He's gotten his team to the Super Bowl. And I really think that his coach was the reason they ended up losing that year to Kansas City, because it's deja vu talking about the Rams and Bengals when you talk about the 49ers and Chiefs that year. Mm-hmm. So San Francisco holds all of the power in that situation. I think that they're going to want to move on from Jimmy G, but it's all going to come down to what fish can they reel back to them when they get rid of Jimmy G. And like I said, they already know what every team is willing to give up, or at least a good majority of the league is willing to give up. So we're going to see San Francisco. I assume they're going to be pulling the trigger. They'll probably wait till a little bit closer to draft time. The combine still has to go on and everything like that, but it shouldn't be long here before we know exactly what San Francisco is willing to do.
I think the Jimmy Garoppolo trigger will get pulled after the Aaron Rodgers move is made. I think that's going to be the big one that kind of sets things in motion, because they might get Aaron Rodgers. If they get Aaron Rodgers, he's for sure gone. Packers, what do they want? And then like the Broncos, if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, I've heard talks that we'd be interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. It's all going to come down because there's 2 quarterbacks everybody's watching this postseason: Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. If you don't hit on those 2, Jimmy Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins are the next 2 right up. I've heard Kirk Cousins is on the block. And to be honest, I don't think Kirk Cousins would be a bad quarterback for the 49ers. I think Kirk Cousins is I think he's hated a bit too much for what talent he brings to the table.
It's what happens when you get $84 million guaranteed.
He's paid a little bit more than what he should, but he's not a bad quarterback by any means. I think he's kind of in the same situation as a Jimmy Garoppolo. He got paid a lot of money, and now they're expecting him to be Aaron Rodgers. They're not Aaron Rodgers, but they're still solid quarterbacks in the NFL. I can't pinpoint where Garoppolo's going to go, but I do think it'll be probably to one of the teams that lose a star quarterback Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson.
In all reality, they probably have the best trade bait with Jimmy Garoppolo to the Packers,
Mm-hmm.
because Packers are another organization who drafted their heir apparent in the first round recently in the draft. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo can teach Jordan Love better than Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers is too busy doing like 12-day cleanses and all this kind of stuff. He's not developing your young quarterback that you just drafted. So I do think that San Francisco, if they wanted to, they could go straight up. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, a third-round pick possibly, for Aaron Rodgers, and just go straight up that way. I think that maybe softens the blow, because the Packers, they don't have to move on from Aaron Rodgers, but contractually they pretty much have to move on from Aaron Rodgers. If they don't restructure him, or if they don't get rid of him, he's going to put that franchise in the red, and it's going to be very difficult for them to keep the same business model that they have with the fan ownership. So I think San Francisco has the best bullets to trade for Aaron Rodgers.
No, I do think they have the best trade bait. The only problem is if Devontae stays or not. I don't think you go after a Jimmy Garoppolo if Devontae's not going to stay, because then it's like, okay, just throw Jordan Love out there with the receivers that we do have. We're not going to overpay to keep Devontae here to play with a mediocre quarterback. If he's going to stay here, cool. Sure, we'll bring him in, but we're not going to do too much crazy. We're not going to bring in a mediocre quarterback to play with bad receivers. That's just not going to work. A mediocre quarterback can move with good receivers. I mean, we saw that. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo's had Debo and Kittle. He's not going to win those games with Scanling and whoever they have at tight end.
Randall Cobb, Tunyon will be back, so Tunyon would be huge for them to get back. But yeah, Randall Cobb, Valdez Scantling are your backups there. So I agree with you. I think that they're gonna. Gutekunst, though, I live in Denver, so I'm able to hear the local coverage of it, and they were talking about his press conference. He's not, he's not tipping his hand at all whether they're going to keep him, restructure the contract with Aaron. Are they discussing that even with him? And I'm not even going to – you cannot listen to Aaron Rodgers for any kind of actual information as to what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. He's just out here trolling to troll right for everybody. He does not care. He really, truly, and honestly, he does not care. So Gutekunst leads me to believe that they are going to try and maybe hamstring their organization. Talk about franchise tagging Davante Adams. That definitely helps your case to keep Aaron Rodgers around. That is a possibility that not a lot of people are talking about. I don't think that it's a high possibility. There is still at least a chance that Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay and he's the quarterback for the Packers next season.
The only issue I have with that is the only information that I've heard out of that situation is Davante Adams has not had any contract talk since the end of the season. And if they franchise tag him, I don't think he's going to be that happy with that. No receiver wants to be franchise tagged year after year. And if this happens, it's taking another year off of his prime where he can go get big bucks somewhere else, risk him getting another injury, not getting a long-term contract, blah, 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 blah. Davante Adams, he wants to go. And I've heard that Denver's making aggressive pushes for Davante Adams. And my theory is if wherever Davante goes, Aaron Rodgers will follow close behind, because that's a duo that is really hard to stop in the NFL.
Yes. No, he's talked about it, and the way that quarterbacks who played with Cooper Kupp talk about Cooper Kupp is how Davante Adams is spoken of. He is highly regarded. He can make your quarterback better. Aaron Rodgers said it, and it probably lost him their playoff game. If he sees Davante Adams in one-on-one coverage, that's where he's going to go. Whether or not anybody else is open, it doesn't even matter. When he's in a certain situation, he's looking for 17, and when 17 is covered, he's going to check it down or throw it out of bounds. That's he is that much of a upgraded receiver. My only thing with trying to get Davante to Denver is you're going to have to give up. People are opening up to the idea of trading a guy like Jerry Jeudy, but he is your recent first-round pick. Had some issues off the field, maybe more interested in being on TikTok than actually being an all-pro wide receiver. But, there's going to be – if you're trying to get Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers, that's a big price tag that you're going to have to be paying. I get the Broncos have the money to do it, but are you really going to – think about it. If the Broncos, when they got Peyton Manning, were able to get a guy like Marvin Harrison or Reggie Wayne, somebody that he played with forever, and they were here for those years, still got the one Super Bowl, are you willing to go through that whole thing again for one more Super Bowl just to be stuck for another 8 years afterwards? Like, I got no quarterback. We got no offensive skill. We barely have a defense that we still call elite. It really wasn't that elite. It's interesting to me to see, just obviously my team never had success, but like the Broncos fans that I know, Nico, my co-host on the far end of the bench, is like, yeah, I'll trade whatever for Aaron Rodgers, 3 more seasons and maybe 1 more Super Bowl. Like, that's not sustainable. That doesn't work. As if you're going to be looked at as a franchise that's top of the league, you're not doing that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're building yourself. You're developing the guys that you draft. You're drafting guys that stay on your team for 2 and 3 contracts. And the Broncos, I think, are just setting themselves up to rinse and repeat what they've done for the past decade.
I agree. I think that that's kind of like a questionable move for most franchises. The only reason I'm for it is because, as a Broncos fan, as much as I love our team, we can't draft a quarterback to save our lives. We've been through, I think, over 10, I think we're about 12 quarterbacks since Peyton Manning's retired, just in Super Bowl 50. We can't draft a quarterback or, hell, even sign one in free agency to save our lives. I don't know why, like, we're making questionable moves left and right. Joe Flacco here, Teddy Bridgewater there. What are we doing? It's a struggle being a Broncos fan watching guys come in and out. So yes, I'm happy with Aaron Rodgers. If he's only here for 3 years, we only win one more. I'm cool with that because we're not going to win one in that time frame with the squad that we have now. As much as I love these guys, and I do love Jerry Jeudy, right? But he's starting to remind me a bit of that Jerry Juju attitude off field. It's like you're going to stop progressing. You're not going to not get as better as fast. You're too busy getting the follows instead of putting the work in. I like him. I think Sutton and Adams would be one hell of a duo to stop. And then you throw in Fant in there too. That's a trio that most teams are going to just throw their arms up and say, "What can we do?" The problem is, like, to get Devontae and Aaron Rodgers here, you got to give up somebody like a Bradley Chubb, and that's not something that I'm too happy about doing.
There's a big portion of the fan base that's willing to get rid of him too, because of, that was the season they drafted Bradley Chubb, where Baker Mayfield got drafted before them, Sam Darnold got drafted before them, and then they passed on 2 other can't miss quarterbacks that ended up being busts too. But since he was drafted in that 5th pick and he was touted as a generational type talent, people are starting to say maybe it'd be worth, Broncos country is almost at the point where if I can sign my mother to be the cafeteria lady at the facility for the Packers, and that gets me Aaron Rodgers, I will deal with not seeing my mother for 3 seasons. She's going to go work in the cafeteria. I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers. He's going to win us our Super Bowls. And by the end of that contract, she can come back. That's what a lot of Broncos country is willing to do for Aaron Rodgers. And this team is talented. It's more talented than a 7-10 record, but I don't think it's talented enough to where you add a guy like Aaron Rodgers and you're number 1 seed in the AFC. I think you are going to add a guy like Aaron Rodgers and still struggle beating the Chiefs and beating the Chargers and maybe even beating the Raiders. I think that you got a little bit more of a leg up with the coaching situation in Vegas now. But Aaron Rodgers, as of this moment, does not make the Broncos the best team in the AFC West.
No, he doesn't, but it gives us a fighting chance, to say the least. And that's kind of all I think Bronco fans are hoping for at this point. Every year we're starting off 3-0, then somehow you look back at the schedule, we're 3-7. It's something. It's a risk that I think most Broncos fans are willing to take, like myself. But there are some players on this roster that I do not want touched. Javonte Williams, don't want him touched. Surtain, no way in hell somebody's touching him. Simmons, please don't touch him. I love this. I love this roster, but at some point you got to go, hey, this isn't working right now. We're not getting much better every year, and a lot of that I do believe falls on the quarterback position, but the guys around you, they're not going to be there until we get a good quarterback. They're not just going to wait like, oh, we'll waste our prime here while you guys go through quarterback and quarterback. So I think you kind of just got to say, F it at the end of the day, go grab Aaron Rodgers, try and win a championship. If not, I think obviously Russell Wilson's the better quarterback to go after, but that asking price is going to be, I think, quite a lot higher.
I mean, it's all dependent on what happens. And a team that has a quarterback and is established that quarterback as their future, it does wonders for you in free agency. That's what a lot of people don't understand in the situation with Cincinnati is you got a lot of guys on that defense that probably don't sign in Cincinnati if Joe Burrow's not the quarterback. Think about guys like DJ Reader, whose contract was up last year. He decided to come back and play because he knew Burrow was going to be there. We got guys like BJ Hill, Mike Hilton, all of these, invest $100 million into the defense, but that opportunity isn't there unless you got a quarterback that the team can all get behind. So that is a factor to consider. My only thing is one position, even if it is as important as the quarterback position, if you're going to hedge your franchise's future on one position in a game that requires 10 other guys to be doing their assignment at a very high level to be successful, it's just a little bit difficult. It's not like basketball where you can justify one supermax and 3 other contracts that are astronomical because one guy can legitimately take over a game. You don't see one guy taking over a game a lot in the NFL. It just doesn't happen all that often, just the nature of the sport.
I agree. But just to round this out, a couple teams. I mean, we just talked about them at the beginning of the show. The Cincinnati Bengals. Does that offensive line need a little upgrade this offseason?
A little upgrade. Yeah, I don't do it in free agency. That is something that I will say. You don't rebuild offensive lines through free agency because the good offensive linemen don't make it to free agency. The ones that you would like to sign aren't going to be there. So focus on the draft. The biggest issue that I had with the Bengals season last year was they missed out on Tevin Jenkins in the second round. The tackle out of Oklahoma State who had just the nastiest film that I've seen coming out of college for a long time. So they need better skill on the offensive line. I think they need a mental edge on the offensive line as well, a guy that's going to hold everybody else accountable because you can see it right now. One of the right side guys gives up a sack and everybody else just tanks because they're like, oh, shit, yep, we do suck. It's almost like when they give up a sack, they're like, oh, man, that's right, we suck. I forgot. Now let's go ahead and give up 4 more. So just a mental leader on that offensive line unit would be miles and miles better than what we were able to see this season. So I think 3 of your first 4 picks should be offensive linemen. Maybe look for a free agent piece here and there. It should all be front 7 and just you have the base layer laid down right now. Let's go ahead and build off of that. We've never really had a high rise with the Cincinnati franchise. Carson Palmer was here and we got good for a little bit and then fell all the way back down because there was no foundation. Now we have this foundation. Let's go ahead, continue to build on top of it. And that starts with drafting guys that are going to play, drafting the right guys that aren't going to come back to bite you in the ass, because we can ask the Jets or the Raiders how drafting first-round picks that have off-field issues work out for them. And then just making sure that your coaching staff understands we lost this team a championship. We lost this team a world championship. So make sure that we don't need to be flashy. We just need to win games. That's all we need to be focusing on. So put the players in the right positions to win games and then call the plays to put those personnel people that you just spent all that time getting into the right position, call the plays that are going to make them successful as well. This is as optimistic as an off-season outlook that I've had in quite some time. It might be the fact that it's the first time we won a playoff game in my entire lifetime and made a Super Bowl run. So I think that they're set up. Now they could screw the pooch completely, and we might be talking about the Bengals back in the top 5 of the 2023 draft. And I'm hoping that that doesn't happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. The Bengals are one of those teams where they're either going to hit on everything or they're going to continue to swing and just make it absolutely way worse on themselves.
The Bengals have built this team. Like I haven't seen a team build a team, turn it around so fast ever. I mean, granted, I haven't been here for too long, but I haven't seen a team do it like the Bengals have. And I guess the final question I have to ask you, I mean, a lot of people love this guy. A lot of people hate this guy. Not sure if you know who I'm alluding to, but do you want Eli Apple back in a uniform next year?
I get the hate for Eli Apple and with what he was doing on social media. I mean, when you troll, people are going to start to build an opinion about you. Like I said, taking out those 2 plays in the Super Bowl where Cooper Kupp just made him look like a 3rd grader playing against a grown man. He was very solid through that entire playoff run. So if he's somebody that we target as a guy like, because truly, who's going to be coming up in free agency that's going to be an upgrade over Eli Apple? Whether or not you think he's a great player, are we going to get anybody better than him? No, then maybe we can overpay him a little bit more. That's the thing. Like, sometimes you have to spend money to make money, and that would be a situation where you're paying a little bit extra because you know that you're not going to get worse at that position, hopefully, knock on wood. And then you're able to, that's a position that you can maybe bolster in the draft as well. collecting DBs and guys that can play in the slot, outside, safety position. Like the Bengals secondary, all 4 guys play cornerback, safety, doesn't matter. So the more guys you can get on your roster like that, I don't think that you can have too many cover guys, especially with the way the NFL is right now. And passing the ball is more efficient than running the ball for some teams in the NFL. So I would keep Eli Apple mainly because where's your upgrade going to come from if you want to go out and get an upgrade? And if you do, you're going to be spending way more money that could be used in other places that would benefit the team more. So I get he's a dick. I get that he's not the nicest guy to follow on social media. He's a damn good NFL defensive back and a better defensive back than the Cincinnati Bengals have had for a long time. So the Bengals fans that want to get rid of him, I just hope that when we're sitting back here, like I mentioned, talking about the Bengals drafted number 3 overall in 2023, they remember that they wanted to get rid of a guy like Eli Apple. And, we ended up having some Joe Schmo that couldn't cover a wet paper bag in his high school JV game.
No, I like all jokes aside, I don't think Eli Apple is a bad cornerback. The only thing I have about him is hopefully he's not like a locker room presence like he is on Twitter. Let's just hope that.
I that's the thing. That locker room is so Joe Burrow could sneeze and he'd have like 50 other guys going to give him a tissue. That locker room is all Joe. I don't have an issue as to what the mentality is like in the locker room because I know if anybody gets out of line, they're going to be going and speaking to number 9, and number 9 holds the cachet in Cincinnati right now. He could get you barred from a bar in the city right now. So if you're going to be a dick in the locker room, you better not be a dick to Burrow if you're playing for Cincinnati. That's all I'm going to say. The dude has the key to the city, and he didn't even win the championship.
I do agree. Joe Burrow's got the keys to the city, and he's going to have the keys to the city for at least the next 10 years. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. But that's going to wrap up this episode. I really want to thank you for coming on. Let the fans know one more time where to find you. And remember, guys, all these links will be in the description down below.
Appreciate you having me on again. Far End of the Bench is my sports podcast that we're doing every Wednesday, Nico and myself. Right now, it's just me. Nico's taking a little bit of a sabbatical to focus on work. He's got some things to clear up before we go super deep into March Madness. So I've been doing a 45-minute Riding the Pine series on the Far End of the Bench feed. You can find that on all podcasting platforms. My other show, Are We All Right? It's a relationship podcast that I do with my girlfriend. It's been a lot of fun. Just started that one recently. You can follow Far End of the Bench on social media at FEOTB Pod and Are We All Right at AWAR Pod. Are We All Right comes out every Friday. Everything drops at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time because it's easy for me. I'm the one who has to edit it and upload it. So that's where you can find the episodes and our social media pages. And like I said, really appreciate it. Even though, it's a Lakers, quote unquote, Lakers branded podcast. It was a lot of fun being on and chatting some football with you.
Well, it's fun being on a podcast with it's branded by the best team in all sports, right?
This isn't a New York Yankees podcast. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, well, I mean, Lakers and Yankees both have something in common. We have to pay to win.
Yeah. And right now we're both paying not to be very good. So yeah, we have a lot in common.
We're not so different after all.
Yeah, exactly.
But all jokes aside, really appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to talking hopefully sometime soon, some more sports.
Definitely. Anytime you need a guest, I'm always happy to jump on and wax poetic about different ball-based events. So I appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. And remember, I'll see you guys in the next one.